I'm excited. I'm not happy. Well, you didn't lose. Jenny McCarthy said there were two winners, and
The winners.
I
Just
fully
holding on
agree
to
with
that, putting that in my pocket, holding on to it. Yeah.
it. But I'm happy because I'm talking to the number one happy artist on Spotify, and I'm
Yes, thank you.
happy that you got to the finale. So I wanted to kind of on that note start with you said that you wanted to show that positivity and sincerity could win. You said that a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because in one of your clues packages, which is one of the things that tipped me off, fun fact, I got you right pretty early.
Yeah.
You said you talked about how people would call you naive or sort of critically dismiss you because you're cheerful and you have this nice attitude. And I'd love your take on that because like, why is it only credible in music if you're like singing about your misery all the time? We need both sides of the
We
spectrum.
need both sides. I think that it is, I don't know. I don't want to sound like something lame. I think it's really hard to write a positive song. I just think it is. I think if you sit down at a piano and you play happy chords, it is much quicker to lean cheesy than if you just play dark chords. And so there's a skill and then a straight up perseverance to just write so many that you get to pick the ones that actually connect and feel grounded. There's something about like being too happy that can sometimes feel ungrounded, which I respect and understand. But we all need some like positivity and to be uplifted from time to time, for sure. So
Who's the number two happy artist on
I have
Spotify?
no idea. I have no idea. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because you had this costume that they point out that always had a smile
Yeah.
on its face at all times, like that kind of smile. Yeah, good impression there. So I wondered if you picked that costume, if there was a symbolism behind that, because you're known for being this happy guy, but you've
Yeah.
also, especially in recent years, talked about your mental health. You've done a lot of podcasts about, it, you've been real open about. It. So like, was there some kind of symbolism there, like smiling on the outside, but
Oh
not always
yeah.
on the
Well,
inside?
they tell you what your costume's going to be. They like you show up to a Zoom meeting and they show it to you and go like, "Is this cool?" And I'm like, "That's unbelievable, so fun." So I really appreciated it. I thought that he was a fun character to inhabit for about a month.
Yeah, and you got to wear the darkness style onesie
Yes.
and all that. So yeah, when we're talking about the idea that you wanted to show that positivity and happiness and cheerfulness could win and can be cool, I think it's an interesting dichotomy because as I've mentioned, it's kind of ironic. Like in the last few years, you've done a lot of podcasts and interviews about mental health and going to therapy, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of artists that used to never talk about that, a lot of celebrities now talk about that. So I'd love
Yeah.
to yeah, in your mental health journey, like why did you start to feel the need to kind of talk about that?
Well, I think there's room for both to be true. Like I think that sincerity and kindness and being uplifting does have a space and can win. And then also coming from me, I think that talking about mental health could have a little extra punch because I'm seen as so happy, you know.
When you started to do that, how was the reaction among, your fans?
Really,
Were they
really
surprised?
sweet and sincere. I think that it's a different world than I grew up in right now, and there's a lot more things coming after your mental health that maybe weren't when we were growing up. So it's just like kind of the norm is with all the screen time and all the extra things that are coming at you all the time to understand that it can be talked about and it's okay to talk about it is good.
And you're a parent, and one of your children, your daughter, like very adorably called into the show. She was like, "You have to win." I was like,
I know, so
She's right."
sweet.
It was very sweet. But yeah, do you worry like as a parent when you're thinking about mental health and like you said, it's a different world now with all the technology and stuff. Like, what are your concerns for her and the younger generation in general, and where your music fits into that?
Yeah, I think that it's just it can be with the phone stuff, it can be all day long. Like unless there's guardrails, there can be not enough time to just be. And so I think talking about it, being intentional about it, and figuring out spaces where you can take care of your mental health and like create some space to be bored a little bit. And I definitely am thinking about that a lot as I'm raising my two little girls.
How is all the stuff we're talking about now, world in general, but also the fact that you've become, in recent years more open about talking about mental health and going to therapy and stuff, how has that affected your songwriting? Is it more happy, less happy, about the same?
No, I think the secret to writing a happy song that works is
Ooh.
being grounded, I think. So being grounded in If you just go like everything's good, the world is amazing, some people are like, I don't believe you. If you go,
Mm.
I'm having a really hard time, but even so, let's be happy, that starts to be something people can hear. Like almost a rebellious sweetness, you know?
Did
Like,
you? So go ahead.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, you've talked about a lot about your mental health during the pandemic, and I was listening to a lot of happy songs during the pandemic. On Spotify had all my happy songs. Like,
Yeah.
did you notice an uptick actually in any of your music streaming or whatever during that time?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of people that needed some music to pick them up during that moment, for sure. Yeah.
What would you say is your absolute happiest song?
Well, it's funny because one of the ones that does the best is a song called "Don't Give Up on Me," which I don't know if that's happy, but it leaves you feeling um, hopefully encouraged or inspired, you know. So the word happy gets a bad rap, I think. Yeah.
Ah, that's good. You never did "Happy" by Pharrell. I'm surprised you didn't
Oh,
do
I
that too.
know. That's such a good song. My God. See, these are the things like when artists take enough time to write a happy song that is great, the world loves it. Like the world needs it. It's just pretty hard to do.
It's interesting what you're saying reminds me of an interview I did with the new wave band OMD,
Yeah.
where they had done like some more experimental, like weird stuff because they wanted to appease the critics, but then, they're known for these like very like bouncy new wave hits.
Yeah.
And the lead singer, Andy McCluskey, was like, writing those new wave bouncy hits was so much harder than noodling around and doing this like weird techno stuff here, you know?
There's something very vulnerable and kind of putting yourself out there to, yeah, yeah. There's something vulnerable about writing a happy song. It just is. It's just not as cool to start with major chords. It just isn't. In my opinion, yeah.
Did that, I mean, it seems like this kind of criticism it's kind of in the past now. Obviously, if you're the number one happy artist on Spotify, you're doing something right. But did that criticism at the time when you came out about, what was it, about 15-ish years
Yeah.
ago? Um, so that was what, the aughts. Yeah, I guess it was a different landscape then, in terms of like a lot of indie rock was doing very well. Like,
Yeah.
um, I guess I'm just asking if the criticism bothered you at the time or made you think you needed to kind of like shift course.
I think so. I think no matter what, whether you're like an indie artist, you want a pop hit. If you're a pop artist, you want an indie hit. Like this is, you always want whatever you don't got. And then hopefully you just continue to get more and more clear on what you love. There's the Rick Rubin book, The Creative Act, where he just talks about like the hardest thing is to make things that you love. Like getting yourself attuned to what you love is so much harder than that sounds. It sounds like, why don't you just make what you love? It's like there's all this noise going on all over the place. To block it all out and go like, wait, what do I love? And let me try to make that. That's a skill that I think you hopefully get better at and have to struggle with your whole artistic career.
Since you come from a background where your parents did children's music, have you ever done or can if for forgive me if I don't know if you have. Have you done children's music?
I haven't done like a children's album. You know, we just watched Captain Underpants with my kids last night, and I have a song in that movie, and I have a song in a Curious George movie. And so like there's a sweetness to writing something simple that children can sing that is great. And my song Don't Give Up on Me, one of the big reasons that it went big was because I did it with an elementary school choir. Um,
Oh.
and that something about children singing Don't Give Up on Me is like just makes you, it's like so beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, wow. You did talk about, I mentioned your parents just now, and you talked about your mother on The
Yep.
Masked Singer, and you've talked a lot about your grief when she passed, and like, I'm sorry again for I'm
Yeah.
sorry for your loss. Can you tell me a bit about how talking about that, not just necessarily in The Masked Singer, but because people didn't necessarily know who you were, but
Yeah.
just in general in interviews and stuff, like any stories about fans that have resonated with what you've talked about.
I think that grief is just like an under discussed topic. I think a lot of people don't really know what it is or how to talk about it. And a lot of times we just go to a funeral and then move on. And it can be a really sweet door into like unbelievable situations. So the way that I understand grief is like, how do you keep someone alive in your life is by doing acts of service that you do in honor of them. And that has been like such a beautiful part of my life. And so writing music with my mom in mind, or talking about her, or doing acts of service in her name has been like one of the most fulfilling parts of my life, for sure.
What What acts of service? Are there certain charities or whatever you want to promote
Yeah,
while
so
talking?
you know, there's a lot of times I'll donate in her name. There's a hospital in Ohio because of how many times I went to that hospital. There's a room with her name on it, which is really sweet. And yeah, and then thinking of her, like she was a songwriter as well. So it's not, you know, I just did a one man show last year, which was all about grief, and
Oh, wow.
it was wild. And there were there was spoken word poetry, and there was songs, and there was a lot of talk about her, and so that was like honoring her for a whole tour, which was really special.
What was that show called? Is it available to watch or listen to online?
I think we're gonna do it again. It's called Greater
Oh,
Than, and it
wow.
was a one man show that was really really special. You know, I
Was
was out doing that show, and what's so cool about it is there's different items on stage, and then there's like six phones in the audience, and people write down someone they love that has passed. And throughout the show, I will like take out a name and read it, and the person will stand up and go to a phone, and we'll have a conversation about the person that's passed away. Wild, awesome, awesome show. Deep tears, crying, laughing, singing. Everybody's going the nuts. So I was finishing that show when I got the call to do this Masked Singer, and I was like, honestly, that sounds like a great pivot, like a
yeah.
wild new experience. So let's go do that. Yeah.
I was about to ask, more openly, like if being on a fun show like this and getting to wear this crazy outfit and stuff was good for your mental well-being. It
It
sounds
was,
like
it
it
was like
was.
a hard reset on what I was doing. Yeah.
I mean, you were so great on it. That show sounds amazing, though.
Thank
I
you.
am curious. Again, I'm kind of going back to the costume or whatever, but there were some people who thought your goody. I don't know if that's the word, but like your cheerful image was, yeah, they didn't like that. But then there's, of course, lots of people who really resonate to that. So did you ever feel pigeonholed? Like you're like, hey, I'm not just the happy guy all the time. Or did you feel any pressure to be like, hey, I got to write another, hey, I'm happy today type of song?
Yeah, again, I think that my first song that came out that did well was a song called "Keep Your Head Up,"
Hmm.
right? And that came from being a street performer, and my mom had just died, and I wrote
Oh,
myself
wow.
a song. So like, if it's grounded in something real, then uplifting music is, I'm not going to curse, but awesome,
You you could curse,
right?
but you don't have to.
So like, if it has intention and it's grounded, then a grounded optimism, I love the sound of that. And when I'm in that lane, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care. Everybody can
Uh,
screw themselves. Yeah.
you were a busker on a you were a busker on a Third Street Promenade, right?
Yeah.
I'm from LA.
Oh,
I grew up
awesome.
here. I grew up here like Asia did,
Yeah.
which is why I remember the anti-club. How did I mean, obviously you were such a great entertainer on The Masked Singer and in general, like how did busking kind
Yeah.
of train you to win over audiences and
Busking, I think, is the closest. I think of all the art forms, stand-up comedy is the got to be the hardest one because you are every couple seconds, if there's not a laugh, it gets so awkward.
hmm
I think that street performing is the closest that music gets to that, where you have to just go like, I'm going to shout to try to build a crowd, and then I'm going to sing, and if you don't like it, it's going to be really awkward. And here we go. Like, let's do it. And just doing that for 8 hours every day will get you to a place where you don't care that much. Like
yeah.
you trained yourself that if someone doesn't like what you're doing, you're going to be all right. Everything's fine. And learning that skill was really important for the career that I have
Right.
because people are going to like you, they're not going to like you. One of my favorite things is like I've done the national anthem like so many times for sports events, and I'm a huge sports fan. Got to do the NBA Finals, NHL, NFL, college, like all the World Series. And when you are putting yourself into a place where people didn't ask you and large numbers are watching you, then I go to my Twitter and I have a text chain with all my high school basketball team, and I just send the meanest ones, and we just
Oh,
die laughing together about it. Like, so you develop a skill to where you doesn't all go in so deeply. It's just like not that serious.
that's an important skill to have. That's also not an easy song to sing. I mean,
Yeah, no, totally.
there are people like, Fergie and Steven Tyler who are known for being really good singers who've messed it up
Of
for
course.
various
Yeah,
reasons. So, did you do covers when you were on the Third Street Promenade, or did you do
yeah,
your own
totally.
song? Did you do any covers that ended up being songs you did on The Masked Singer or
None of
anything
the
like that?
covers made it from there to here, but I do remember there's something really valuable by starting singing a ton of covers because you are every day looking at the mechanics and singing the mechanics of what makes a great song. So I was studying a lot. And I hadn't been singing as many covers as I just did on this Masked Singer show. And that like opened me up again to like when you sing something, you're like, that sounds great. Why? And then you go deep into like, what? Why does this sound so good? Why is this pre-chorus lifting off into the hook this way? It gets almost scientific about it. Yeah.
I mean, you threw down the gauntlet in your first episode because you did, I believe, in a thing called love. I got the
So
dark. I
fun.
mean, not. I mean, Justin Hoggins, his voice is up here,
Yeah.
like, and you nailed it.
So
What
fun.
made you? I mean, I don't know behind the scenes how much say you have in the songs you do,
No, I
but
chose that one because I wanted to come
uh,
out hard and ridiculous. Yeah.
it's pretty cool. What I also think is funny is that Rita Ora later claimed she didn't know who the lead singer of the Darkness's name is, and she was on the UK version when he was revealed. She knows his name.
Oh, she
Right?
knows it. Got it.
She
That's fun.
knows his name. But yeah, once you did that, like I feel like you kind of I guess a lot of people don't, and I don't mean this in any kind of shady way, but I guess a lot of people don't necessarily know what range you have as a
Sure.
singer. Like, was that something you wanted to sort of flex?
No, I think also it's been something I've really developed over my career. When I started as a street performer, I didn't think my voice was very good. And sometimes our weaknesses are very important. So I remember when I was street performing, I was like, it's not going to be my voice that does this. I'm going to have to write songs. Like, I'm going to need to really figure out how to write songs because I'm out on this street and I can tell I don't have the best voice out here. But over 15 years of singing every day, there was something sweet about going on the Masked Singer and be like, oh yeah, my voice is pretty good now. Like, this is gonna be fun. I
How did
had
it
that exact thought, literally, like almost surprised. Yeah.
how did it feel when you got, I mean, people were, I believe someone thought you were Brandon Flowers, who's like an
Yeah, so
amazing singer.
sweet.
How did it feel? The judges were so complimentary to your
Very
voice.
complimentary. Just stroking my ego behind a monster mask. Loved it. Yeah.
Well, I should probably let you go, but I guess since we started off with talking about any kind of stigma about happy songs and how they sound easy, but they're deceptively not easy.
Yes.
What's the key if there's someone watching this who's like, I want to write like the happy anthem of 2025? Like, what's the key to writing a good happy song?
I think that it has to be true. Like, if what you're singing is true, and that sounds maybe lame, but like, again, I'm singing You Got to Keep Your Head Up to myself because my mom just died. I don't know why that transfers to then everybody really getting it, but the intention of it is true, and therefore that works. So don't write a happy song, don't fake it. I think that people can smell bullshit on happy songs way quicker than on sad songs. That's all I'm saying.
And you swore, and
Yeah,
it's okay.
got it.
Yeah. Well, end it on that note. Is there anything now that your Masked Singer run has come to an end that you are working on? You want to talk
Oh
about?
man,
What
we're
is
heading
it?
on the Monster Tour in August. Going out before then for a couple dates, opening up for Shania Twain, which is going to be so
Ooh,
fun. And yeah, it's going to be a really, really great summer.
awesome. Well, I was happy to talk with you.
Lovely
And
chatting with you, my
keep
dear.
holding. It was lovely chatting with you. Keep that number one spot.
Awesome.
You're doing great. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And congratulations on being, in my mind and Jenny McCarthy's mind, the co-winner of the Masked Singer season 13. Lucky 13.
Appreciate it.